guys, it's Miss Yarnick. I hope you're doing well in the midst of all this craziness. I'm so sorry you can't see my face. For some reason, Loom won't let my picture pop up when I'm showing you this Fusion interactive lesson, so I apologize for that, but I promise I'm going to get through this quickly so it can be as painless as possible. So this week we're going to be looking at tides, and if you've never been to the ocean or a large body of water, you may not know what tides are. Basically, all they are changes in water level in the ocean or large bodies of water like lakes. And that's just due to the gravitational pulls of both the moon and the sun, causing the water levels to rise and fall. So something important we need you to remember is that even though the sun is bigger than the moon, much, much bigger than the moon is going to have more of an impact on our tides here on Earth. And that's just because the moon is closer in location than the sun is. So the moon is going to have more of an impact on our tides. And so first I want to look at high tides and low tides. So we have 2 high tides in a day and 2 low tides in a day. And where we're looking at high tides and low tides, we're looking at the relationship between the moon and its gravitational pull on the Earth as the Earth is rotating on its axis over a 24-hour period, so in one day. So high tides and low tides occur every about 6 hours, and like I said, they occur twice a day each. So I really like this visual because it kind of helps us focus on one area. So in this visual, we're focusing on the United States. As you can see at 0 hours, the United States is facing away from the moon. And due to this, we're not going to be feeling the impacts of that gravitational pull as much. So we're actually going to have low tides, which means our water levels are going to fall. And then if we speed ahead 6 hours, we can see that the United States is now facing the moon. And since the US is facing the moon, we're going to be feeling the impacts of that gravitational pull from the moon. So our water levels are going to rise. Jumping ahead at another 6 hours, we are facing away from the moon once again. So our water levels are going to fall. And once again, it's just because we're not going to be feeling the effects of that gravitational pull as much since we're not facing towards the moon. And then we're going to have a high tide again 6 hours later, and we're going to be facing in the complete opposite direction of the moon. So you might be wondering, why are we going to have high tides if we are not facing the moon? And that's because of Newton's third law. So if you think back to first semester when we talked about Newton's third law, we know that for every action we have an opposite and equal reaction. So that's what's happening here. So since we had high tides, so rising water levels when we were facing the moon, when we're facing directly opposite of the moon, we're going to have the opposite and equal reaction of that happening. So we're going to have water levels rising once again. Real quickly, I want you to look at this slide, and this kind of explains it a little bit more. So you can see when we're facing the moon, we're going to have a higher high tide, and when we're facing opposite of that, we're going to have a lower high tide. So we're still going to be having a high tide, but it's not going to be quite as high as when we're facing the moon.
It's comedy hour with Miss Crazy Bad Jokes. My jokes are awesome. Ready for joke 1? What's the difference between the land and the sea? The land is dirty, but the sea is tidy. Sure about that? Yeah. Okay, fine. This one will make you laugh. Did you hear about the results between the game between the beach and the ocean? No. They tied. Alright, sure? This one will get you. Why did the fish swim across the Atlantic? To get to the other tide. Why would fish swim across the Atlantic? Oh yeah, you guys are a top audience.
So now we're going to be looking at spring and neap tides. So spring and neap tides both occur twice a month. So our high and low tides occur twice a day. Our spring and neap tides occur twice a month. And this is just, these are caused as a result of the arrangement of the moon, sun, and earth. So let's first look at neap tides. As you can see, our moon, our Earth, and our sun are kind of making a 90-degree angle. So they're not perfectly aligned in a straight line. So neap tides occur, like I said, twice a month, and this is during the first and third quarter moon. And since our Earth, sun, and moon don't make a straight line, we are going to have the gravitational poles of the moon and sun in opposite directions. So as you can see, the gravitational pull of the moon is going kind of up and down. And you can see that they're having a larger gravitational pull than the sun is, which is going kind of left and right or side to side. So you can see those gravitational pulls are in opposite directions. And then with our spring tide, those are also going to occur twice a month, and that's going to be when our sun, earth, and moon are in a straight line. And spring tides are stronger than neap tides because you have the gravitational pulls of the sun and moon overlapping each other. So those occur at new and full moons, and they're going to be much, much stronger than our neap tides. So the last thing I need you to know is the alliterations that will help you to memorize neap and spring tides. So neap tides, the alliteration to help you memorize those are neap, 90, and not as strong. So in a neap tide, the Earth, sun, and moon are at a 90-degree angle. They make a 90-degree angle, so it's not in a straight line. And it's going to cause tides that are not as strong because you have the gravitational pulls of the moon and sun in opposite directions. And then at a spring tide, the way to remember that is spring, straight, and strong. So at a spring tide, the Earth, sun, and moon are going to make a straight line, and you're going to have very strong tides because of the gravitational pulls of the sun and moon overlapping each other. So that's all you need to know about neap and spring tides, and I hope that helps you with your activities this week.
Hey there, everyone. Let's look at the lunar effect, tides, and werewolves on another tangent with Dr. Pearson. Have you ever sat there and wondered why people start acting crazy or just seem to do weird things during a full moon? Or what about the origin stories of the werewolf? I mean, we've seen stories of wolves howling at the moon, and especially a full moon. But why is that? And then how did that go ahead and evolve into this half wolf, half man that comes out during a full moon, goes through this awful transformation, and attacks people during a full moon? Well, let's go ahead and think about just tides in general and the effect of liquids here on Earth during a full moon and a new moon. Now, when the Earth, Sun, and Moon go ahead and align, this is a term called syzygy. Now, syzygy just means that all celestial objects are aligned. In this case, we're talking about the Earth, Sun, and Moon. This creates a tremendous pull on the Earth. This is where we get the spring tides. Spring tides are very strong tides, and they affect all the liquid here on Earth. In fact, so much that it actually makes a bulge on the Earth. So if it's able to have that kind of effect on the Earth, why couldn't it have an effect on organisms that are mostly water as well? And we actually can see that to where if we start tracking blood pressures, and hospitals have lots of data over time of this occurring, looking at the blood pressures of people, we actually see an increase of blood pressures in people. And we actually can start tracking that we see brain pressures increasing during this time period as well. Increased blood pressure, increased pressure of the liquid that is pushing and inside the brain can go ahead and cause impairment because of the extra forces acting upon the brain, and it can cause people to go crazy. In fact, as early as when written word could be put into script, we see the etymology of the word lunatic, which means crazy. Lunatic just means moonstruck. It has the root term luna, which comes from lunar, which is the moon. So a lunatic just means moonstruck. So people have been looking at this phenomenon of people just going crazy during a full moon. But it's not only during a full moon, it's actually during a new moon as well. However, with a new moon, we see it better because with the full moon, it's 22% brighter than it is with the new moon. So we like going outside a little bit more since we are creatures that rely upon our sight an awful lot. Without that light, we kind of like hide a little bit more, and it's just that it's that protective stance that we have, and that we don't want to make ourselves vulnerable by us not being able to see very well and things being able to creep up on us and being able to attack us. So let's start considering our story. Now we're in a medieval town, and we're sitting here in the middle of our chores going, I wonder why the magistrate and all the authorities tell us to go ahead and make sure that we're in our house before dark. Um, to be honest, most of the writing is so that they can go ahead and control crime and just try to keep most of the populace, under control. Because again, it's hard to see things at night, so they're just trying to control the population. However, there's a lot of nocturnal animals out there as well. We couldn't protect ourselves from wolves and bears, and wolves especially are known to be nocturnal hunters that would attack cattle, and if they're really hungry, they would attack people. And this is well documented. However, as time goes on, one full moon, you're outside, and oh my, what is that? You see something that looks just like this on the screen that seems to be attacking somebody and just biting into somebody. And then they get up on their legs, on two legs, and they run away. Well, that couldn't be a wolf. Well, but it wasn't a person. And what person would actually act like that? That's kind of crazy. Well, as I start running away from this furry creature and starting to figure out what in the world it is, I have no way to be able to define it. So, how do I explain this to the authorities as to what attacked my neighbor and what was chasing me? Because how do I know they're not going to blame me since I saw the attack? Well, coming back and sitting there thinking about that, well, I know that people aren't going to be out at night, and wolves are really known for going after people. But what would happen if a wolf actually attacked a person and just bit them, and then all of a sudden they turn during this period of being a full moon? Well, here goes a situation where we can see people of extremely hairy origin and comparing that to a wolf. If it's dark outside where we can't see very well, even with the full moon, we still can't see anywhere near as well as what we can during the day. We can go ahead and confuse that. And when we are scared and we have all kinds of things going on between the adrenaline, low light, the effects of the synergy affecting us as well. Perhaps in my mind, I'm starting to define what a furry guy here looks like versus what the wolf looks like in order to make sense in my head. Well, does that really help with the wolf population? Really not fair to the wolf population, because really it had nothing to do with wolves. They actually howl at all different times. It's thought to be a way to communicate over long distances, especially when there's a kill and they're trying to get people. They're trying to get their pack mates back to be able to partake in that kill. But again, stories go ahead and start circulating, and we start just talking about, well, what in the world did happen? And why did this occur? And, knowing that people act a little bit crazy during the full moon and we have wolves attacking people, is it really that far off? Well, start thinking about the folk stories. We have Little Red Riding Hood that is written and gives personification to the wolf to where it's able to talk and it's standing up on hind legs. And then we start getting into the story of werewolves, where people go into a transformation and they're able to start just biting people. And really, if I don't have a way to be able to define it and really put words to it, then it starts making sense as a story writer that this is something I would do. Well, thank you very much for spending time with me on another tangent, and I look forward to being able to talk with you again.